Hey, Lounge family, I just wanted to take a minute and personally thank you for being a part of this community and for leading and serving people so well. Thank you for the effort that you put in that no one else sees, the tears that you might shed. All of that is not in vain. It doesn't go overlooked. It might feel overlooked by people, but I believe the Lord sees you and sees your effort. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I just wanted to remind everybody that I'm truly in your corner as a fellow leader, as somebody who's just trying to be diligent in the area of service. And I'm always here for you. Please reach out if you need anything. But these next few minutes together, we're going to be talking about conflict resolution. And today is 201. It's not a part 2 of 101. It is 201. And today's focus is having difficult conversations. So now we are inside of the room where it happened. We are inside the conversation, inside the dialogue. And I'm going to give you today 10 practical steps on how to move the conversation forward, getting to that end result, which is the relationship moving forward and in turn, the organization moving forward. So I hope and pray that these next few minutes together absolutely encourages you and you feel equipped and all the more confident. Thank you for being a part of the Lounge family. Thank you for being a part of my life. I'll see you in a few minutes. Now, conflict resolution goes all the way from your friendships, maybe your marriage, definitely with your coworkers and teammates. Of course, I'm talking more about the teammates, coworkers aspect of things, probably in something like the Lounge. And so let's continue the conversation today, talking about 201 and difficult conversations. Now, we are now in the room having the conversation. That is the context we're going to be looking through. Okay. So I'm going to give you 10 points today on what to do, practically speaking, in these meetings. Okay. Number one, we're going to listen to understand and not respond. It's really easy to listen to solely respond, right? You sit there and you're gaining information only to respond, and you're not actually engaged with what is happening in front of you. You're not necessarily maxing out empathy, applying much empathy in the moment because you are somewhat distracted by your own current thoughts and you're already thinking about the entire teaching or your case that you're going to respond with. And so it is so key in these type of settings when you are attempting to resolve conflict for the greater good, you must make it very clear that you are in it for the greater good. And you do that by listening to understand and not respond. I think we are caught up in a society. Everybody wants their truth. Everybody would rather be right in their own ways than be unified. Everybody wants to respond and say what they need to say. And yes, it is about, yes, we can give freedom of speech, etc. But that shouldn't be at the neglection of not trying to understand somebody and their pain and their heart. And I call it the lost art of empathy. We've lost empathy by and large. I don't know if we've had it by and large, but I know that if we had it, we've lost it by and large here in society. We need to sit down and understand, look into somebody's eyes. And I mean, even going to the extent of, as the Bible would say, weeping with those who weep and rejoicing with those who rejoice. And that is implying empathy. Empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy is to feel for somebody. Like, I feel bad for you. Empathy is to feel, you could look it up and it might say with someone. You feel with them. You're on their level. You get eye to eye with them. But empathy, actually, if you go back to the original, really, where it was derived from, it actually means to feel in. In other words, it paints a picture that I'm getting in your soul with you and I'm seeing something through the same lens of pain and the same lens of joy that you are. So anyways, all that to say, I don't have time to get into much about empathy. We'll get into emotional intelligence much more as a leader and empathy, etc., moving forward. But my encouragement to us, and I'm spending a little more time on this point, and I put it number one for a reason, is because I used to do this. I used to listen to respond and not just try to understand. And there's something powerful in relationship. There's something powerful in humanity when we simply listen to understand. Okay? So it's important to say things like, I want to understand. Help me understand. If I'm understanding correctly, etc. Okay? That's number one. Listen to understand, not respond. Number two, goes without being said, but keep your cool. Even in your nonverbals, even in your, your mannerisms, your demeanor, your attitude, your tone. Okay. You could say the word okay sarcastically. You could say it aggressively. You could say it frustratingly. You could say it simply. There's so many tone. It matters so much when you say certain things certain ways. I mean, it could set off the whole conversation. And then when you lose your cool, even in the slightest way, you roll your eyes. It now creates a wall to resolution. You don't want a wall to resolution. And I hope you're not meeting with somebody to resolve conflict just to make your case or just to, say what you need to say. That's not actually attempting to resolve the conflict. And so don't go in with the agenda to win the conversation. That is communication 101, especially with a friend or your spouse. You don't go into the conversation trying to win. Okay, so going back to our point here, do your best to keep your cool. I've seen people lose their stuff, flip tables, literally and figuratively. So in the name of trying to resolve conflict, no, just there's no need for it. I always respect somebody who can hold their composure. I consider myself a man of composure. I really value people who can keep their composure in tough settings. Of course, seasonally, keeping their composure, keeping their character, of course, but specifically in conversation. In this conversation right here, if you can just stay cool, calm, collected, just take a breath and keep your cool and know that this is what it's going to take to get to the end goal, which is to resolve your conflict. So number two, keep your cool. Number three, don't be defensive. When I'm meeting with It's like when I'm meeting with people, with certain people, they it's like they have to defend themselves. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to consistently sit back, because at that point, if you are a person who consistently defends yourself, first of all, you are communicating to, in essence, that you have already decided that your case is right and that I'm wrong. Therefore, why are we spending our time in this conversation and doing it in the name of conflict resolution? So that's not saying don't get the ultimate truth across. If there's a misunderstanding, if you're trying to attempt to bring clarity to the conversation, that is much different than just solely defending yourself, because in the context of conflict resolution, it ought to be, I call it a hot atmosphere, HOT. You might have heard it before: honest, open, and transparent. Because you want to get everything on the table, while at the same time, of course, as the last slide said, keep your cool. So So it's this sweet tension area because you want to get everything on the table, everything out in front of you, all the facts, the feelings, etc., while you keep your cool and while you don't put up this wall of defense. Okay. Again, not saying don't get the truth out or the facts out. Now, if you're just trying to get your truth across and make your case, that's different than the ultimate state of facts, probably, to the conversation, get the right ingredients out there. But just my point here is don't be defensive. Don't constantly, if I'm saying something to you, for example, well, Michael, when this happens, you have an inclination maybe to lean this way, though it seems, well, no, I never do that. I have no idea what you're talking about. This is absolutely crazy, and this is ridiculous, and you are absolutely wrong, and blah blah blah, and or you make excuses. Well, you say every time that this happens, I do this thing, but or you say oftentimes when that happens, I do this thing, but here's my reason why. You're constantly trying to defend yourself, or you're throwing out excuses, and we just don't want to do that. The best thing to do is to stay low if the facts are correct. The question is, in these conversations, we need to just take a moment to consider, maybe they're right. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am being immature. Maybe that was the wrong way to go about it. Could it just be that sometimes I'm wrong? You ever consider that as a leader? Could it just be that I messed this up? I got it wrong. I screwed it up. I jacked it up. And that's a sweet place to be as a leader, by the way, is when you get to a place and acknowledge that I don't always have to be right. Take off the weight of this all of being perfect. It's one of the best things you could do probably as a leader and influencer is just admitting that you messed up, being transparent, And so anyways, number 3, don't be defensive. We'll move on from this point. Okay. Number 4, again, this is, you are in the meeting of resolving conflict. So you want to clarify intentions, motivations, and purpose. So my intent is to come to a resolve so that we can move forward. My motivation is that I love you. I love this relationship. I want to make sure that we resolve this because I absolutely care about your heart. I care about what we have. I care about the greater good, the state of all. It's my motivation. And then, of course, I don't want us to get the wrong viewpoints or perspectives of one another because I know that it's probably incorrect thus far. And I want to make sure that this gets right moving forward. And then the purpose of this, of course, is to resolve it. So they're all brothers and sisters to one another, but you want to, because sometimes conflict resolutions, you know how those meetings can be. And we see them in movies all the time, and it happens like every other meeting that I have. You kind of come in, what's up, how you doing, or you hug it out, you break the ice, and you're all smooth, and you both know where this is going. But for 5 or 10 minutes, you're just like, you are avoiding it, or you're just doing what is cordial or what is, socially expected or whatever, and that type of stuff's hard for me because I know where I want to get the destination with it all. If it's a conflict resolution or a confrontational type of thing, but the point is sometimes conversations after you get into the attempt, towards resolution, they can get off track a little bit, right? Because emotions can flare, something can get heated, something can be could be misunderstood. You want to make sure that you consistently bring it back to this. Oh, okay. You say, okay, I think we're getting off track here. You can always put it on you because that always helps with the sometimes inevitable wall. Sometimes inevitable. I don't know if that might be a bit of an oxymoron, but you get my point. It just helps when you just put it on you. Back in the day, My necklace all twisted up. Back in the day when I played football, anytime that I would, this is really going to bother me, y'all. So let me bear with me for a minute. I don't know what I did here. There we go. When I used to I see it on the screen, I'm OCD, it's going to trip me up. And it's going to distract a couple of y'all too. I already know. When I was quarterback, so quarterback's the one who throws the ball. Even if I would hit my receiver right in the hands with the ball, there was just this thing in me, and I still do it to this day, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. I'm just in it for the greater good. So still, what I would do was I sometimes would take the blame. I'd be like, my bad, y'all. Hey, my bad. I could have put it somewhere else. Whatever. I'm like, I hit you right in the face mask or right in the numbers. The ball literally stuck in this guy's face mask one time I threw the ball. And so, what it did was it alleviated the pressure off of them. And I'll take it for a minute. Anyways, my point, sometimes in these meetings, if stuff gets wayward, it's completely okay by just saying, hey, that was my bad. I think I got us off track here. Let's get back to the, intent, the heart, the motive of this meeting. Okay. So constantly have that in front of you. Don't lose sight of that. Bring it back. And they'll be like, okay, you're right. We're in this room right now trying to resolve this because X, Y, Z. Right. So clarify your intentions, motivations, and purpose. Just stay on track as much as you can, especially when you might be a little, you're meeting in a minefield, right? A little bit sometimes. Okay. That sounds like a book. Okay. Number 5, take breaks if needed. There's nothing wrong saying, hey, let's just take 5, a quick restroom, coffee break, something like that, especially when it gets, again, wayward, off track, whatever, emotions high. Yeah, it's okay to take a break. Absolutely. This goes for almost every meeting that you're in. Just take a break, regather, disconnect for just a moment, come back. Okay. Number 5. Number 6, big one right here. You can disagree. It is absolutely okay to just disagree. Matter of fact, conflict resolution at the end, when it comes to that resolution, there probably will be some compromise on both sides. Okay. And disagreement isn't always a bad thing. There are plenty of things my wife and I disagree on, but I'll tell you one thing we will never do is dishonor one another. You can disagree with somebody for anybody, but that does not give you the permission to dishonor. Especially if you're a Christian watching this, listening to this. If you are a Christian, I just challenge you and I hold you accountable to that. We don't have the right to dishonor anyone, but it's okay to disagree though. And there's nothing. Are you mature enough to handle somebody disagreeing with you and not seeing your side of things? It's okay. You might have to lay down that, now not forsaking or neglecting your conviction, of course. You might have to just lay it down a little bit and kind of, do it in another way or another style or version of, your conviction. But not changing it. Of course, don't walk away from that while they kind of meet you, quote unquote, in the middle as well. But if you're just wrong, then whatever. But you can disagree, but you cannot dishonor. So if y'all are disagreeing in the room, don't think that there's no hope to resolve conflict. Just because you disagree does not mean you cannot resolve your conflict with a teammate. But through it all, you can't dishonor. You can't be like, man, it's absolutely crazy. I don't agree with you. Man, you suck. I hate you. You're stupid. You ain't ever, blah, blah, blah. That's an extreme case, of course, but you get my point. I hope so. You can disagree, but you cannot dishonor. Okay, so number 6, please don't do that. Number 7, admit when you are wrong and apologize. I alluded to this a few minutes ago. Just admit it. You know what? That one's on me. I messed up. And it might throw the other person off, especially if they respect you as a leader, because people hold leaders to such high esteem or high regard or put them on a pedestal. And when that leader they respect admits they're wrong. One time I was on a team, and this team was going back and forth in an email thread, and they were talking about going to a specific place to celebrate at the Christmas party, the staff Christmas party. They were going to go, and they were going to basically get lit. They were going to get turned, and they were talking about what drinks they're going to get and being out in public and all this stuff. And they were really excited upon the thought that they were about to go out and just lose their minds. So I was young at this time. It was, whatever. And so I know I'm still young, whatever, but I was much younger. It was over a decade ago, and about 10 years ago ish. And so I just emailed back to the thread and I said, hey guys, Merry Christmas. Y'all count me out. I'm all good. And the leader of this organization called me a couple hours later and just said, you know what, Tyler, you are absolutely, you're so right. This isn't us. Thank you for just stepping up and saying something. We were wrong, and I'm sorry. And I didn't sit back in judgment saying, I can't believe that the former happened, that the emails happened. I sat back more in awe because it was somebody who I had a ton of respect for as a leader, as a boss. And this person called me and admitted that they were wrong, and they apologized. And I sat back and I was just like, I had so much more respect for them afterwards. And we talked more about it later on. But my point is, it goes a long way when you just admit that maybe you were just wrong. Can you swallow the fact that maybe you just messed up? Are you secure enough to apologize and move on? Some people cannot apologize, especially leaders. And it drives me crazy, because an apology with true change on the other side, not an empty one, but an apology would go a long way. We've seen this time to time in mainstream stuff. If somebody can just apologize, admit they were wrong, and make a change, from celebrities to etc., then I think that it will go a long ways in people's hearts, right? And then, of course, true change to follow. Okay, number 8, never interrupt. Don't interrupt. I can't really think of exceptions to this unless somebody, even if somebody has completely flipped on you, you can dismiss them from the office. If somebody is going down a track of emotions that's unhealthy, that whatever, maybe you can find some type of little, crevice, maybe a little fault in this point to interrupt somebody. But for them, if you're just in dialogue, do not interrupt, because that communicates a whole nother thing, that you don't value what they're trying to communicate to you. So do not interrupt the other person. Give them space to talk. The art of listening. Number 9, avoid blanket statements. Things like "you always." My counselor was helping me with this, because I kept saying things like, "I always do this," or this is what I always do, or "I never." And so one time he stopped me. He said, "How many times?" When I said, "I always do this," he said, "How many times have you actually done it? The last 10 times that you did it?" And I was like, "I don't know, man, like half the time." And he goes, "Then don't say always." He said, "Say sometimes." If you do more than half the time, say oftentimes. If you do less than 5, say seldomly, But he said, don't say always, or don't say you never. That's some marriage 101 stuff. You never listen to me, or you never do the dishes, or, you always shut off, when I'm trying to talk to you. That type of stuff, it's not fair, especially when they are trying to make an attempt to change, or to, be intentional on doing what you say they never do. It's a blow. It's a gut punch. So just be careful not to say, like, you always say this to me, or you always look at me this way, or you always have to have the last word. It's like, that might not be true, maybe most of the time, but saying it's just best to stay away. And even, let me kind of turn the mirror, or kind of switch angles real quick. Be careful what you say to yourself, your self-talk. And I never do this. I never get it right. I always, etc. No, don't lie to yourself. If it's not true, don't say it. Just beat yourself up. Okay. So avoid blanket statements. It goes a long way in any relationship, externally, internally. All right. Number 9, last one, but not least, don't act like everything is okay if it is not. One time I got out of a pretty intense meeting just a little bit ago. And at the very end, this person stood up, hugged my neck, and was broing this, broing that, acting like we were homies. It was a while back. And I was just like, I'm not your boy. I don't know what you think got resolved in this conversation, but it wasn't really what just happened. I was more like in shock. Like, I think that they are good with what just happened. And I'm more confused and more irritated and demotivated, discouraged a little bit. But don't act like everything's okay at the end of the meeting. Just if you can't get it resolved in a lot of amount of time, then just say, make your intentions clear. Just say, hey, I love to pick this back up next week. I sense we've made some progress today. I know we still got a ways to go, and I know that the work's going to be worth it. Why? Because I value you, I value us, and I'm just really, really motivated to resolve this because I don't want to move forward without doing it. So, hey, let's just pick back up. It is what it is for now. I thank you so much for your time, etc. But don't be like, oh man, that was awesome. Oh, hey, I love you, man. I love you so much. All right, man, let's pick it back up next week. And you get back next week and you're like, it just don't act like, I don't know, man. Maybe that's like a street thing for me or something, but just in general, don't act like we're close if we're not close. I don't know you. You're not my boy. We're not friends. Don't act like everything's okay if it's not. And so, but in this context, at the end of the meeting, just you can shake it out, hug it out, of course, be respectful and honorable and, but and professional, but you don't have to like go out to dinner that night. Now if it's one of those conflict resolution moments with like one of your homies and you're really just trying to work through something and it takes elongated time of hanging out and dinners and social stuff and texting and all that's a little bit different. I am talking probably more through the lens of your teammate, a coworker, somebody who you do really value. But anyways, I hope that makes sense, but don't act like everything's okay if it's not. All right. Let's see. What time do we have? 8:28, 28 minutes in. I'll take a couple minutes to answer any questions that you might have. This is pretty simple teaching, conflict resolution 201, talking about the in the room where it happens settings. Any questions whatsoever? Michael, I knew it would be you. I had no doubt.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for that talk. It was really good. Very, very eye-opening for me. I have a question on point 8, which says never interrupt. What would you do if you're talking to someone and they're trying to interrupt you? Like, how would you handle that?
What I would not do, first of all, I wouldn't one up their interruption. Okay. If they interrupt you, I wouldn't say, hey, let me if they come back in or whatever, I'm like, hey, let me talk. Hey, blah, 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 blah. You never let me talk. Like, whoa. Yeah. And that's when it just gets, what I would do practically, at least most of the time, is if it's to a place where I just need to dismiss myself from the room, then I've done that before. But for the most part, I just eat it. They interrupt me, I sit back in silence and I just listen. And then I will circle back to it and mention, because sometimes I've had to work on this a lot because I do actually interrupt people, because 3 words into what you're saying, I actually already know what you're going to say. And so, because I think for speed's sake, And because I want to get to the resolution real quickly, I think I jump in, but I'm interrupting somebody. And that's something that I'm still working on, something that I'm not flawless at. But yeah, so I would take it, sit back, but I would circle back to it in the right time and just say, it seems that a few different times in this conversation, you didn't let me process my thought or finish my thought. And I think it would be just incredible of you if maybe you wouldn't interrupt. I know that's not your intention, to make me feel this way, but I want to make sure that I communicate everything I need to communicate to you, because I care about this. And I know that it's going to take two of us to resolve conflict, and we can't resolve this if I can't communicate. You kind of put a little, there have been a few times to where I've just had to be very clear, just, hey man, please don't interrupt me. I want to make sure that I communicate what we need to in this conversation as well. It takes two to contribute, right? So it depends on where you're at in the conversation. I think it requires incredible emotional intelligence to kind of read that where you are. But I think a general rule is try not to one up them. I even do this, like I'll try to apply this in really any relationship, even my marriage. Now Jaylee's good at listening. I'm not saying that she's not, but I won't try to, because to interrupt somebody, you usually have to be like a tone ahead, right? Or like a little bit, the volume of the dynamic a little louder maybe. And so what you don't need to do is jump from here to here to pull back the attention, right? And so anyways, I think that's probably just a good practical thing I could give you. Don't one up them. But I think applying major, emotional intelligence where you are in the conversation and the dialogue on how, that determines how you will communicate. Hey, don't interrupt me. Because at the same time, like, you do need to make very clear to them that you're not going to allow them to keep interrupting you. If they keep interrupting, then that might imply that they're consistently trying to defend themselves. And they're also, if they interrupt you one too many times, they're communicating that they've already decided that they're right and that you're wrong. And so what's really the point of this? And so there's nothing wrong at the right time to say something like that as well, in a very respectful tone. Hey, it seems to me that you've already decided in your mind that, I'm not so sure. I'm not convinced that you actually want to resolve this conflict. I'm convinced more that you want to, state your truth, and you want me to come to your side of things. And so there's no compromise here. There's no resolution. And so maybe we can revisit it another day, because sometimes here's the truth of leadership. Sometimes there are some meetings, and this is hard, especially when you got to work with them every single day. There are some meetings, there's some conflict that doesn't get resolved.
Yeah.
Period. That's just, especially, here's the thing, especially when you aren't the boss and you can't fire that person. Now, for me, as the CEO, right? Now, I'm speaking now for my business, not necessarily my ministry side of things, to where I'm the associate and I do some of the, interviews, and I onboard people, and my voice carries weight into who to hire or whatever, but I'm not the one to pull people in meetings and I can't fire them. But as a CEO, if I can't resolve conflict with you, like, I hire, one of the reasons why I hire, why I'm going to hire certain people is because I want to like the people that I work with. I want chemistry. If I didn't like Leah as a person, not just as a worker, I like her as a worker because she brings a lot of value. But if I didn't like her as a person, I wouldn't have hired her. Right? I have to like you as a person, because it's going to be a family thing. We're a team unit. And so my point is, as a CEO, if I can't resolve conflict with somebody, of course, that's when I'll dismiss them from the team. But in this other seat that I'm in, which this is more relatable to some of you, because you can lead, but you're not in charge, right? And so resolution on a team, not as somebody who works for you, but sometimes there's going to be conflict that just doesn't get resolved, at least in that moment. Maybe they're walking through something you have no idea about. Maybe the problem isn't the problem. Maybe they got issues with you, but the issue ain't you. Maybe they're just dealing with something within, an insecurity. Maybe they're walking through something. And so that's when you just apply major empathy and try to understand. This is why I started with, listen to understand, not respond. Empathy goes a long way when you sit with somebody and you try to see it, you try to understand from their view. Oh my gosh, because that's what you want people to do with you, right? You want people to, as we would say in our culture, get in your shoes for a day. You would understand them a whole lot better.